Brothers, this is Corey Rigler, and a brother not to be named for fear of his own safety. But this is the latest in the videos of the Quaestor faculty, and today we're just going to talk about when you're facilitating your discussion group, ways to bring up transparency and talk about transparency so that it's really relevant to the undergrads in your group, and so they actually do something about it. And so I personally was not a Quaestor when I was an undergrad. Wes, what about you?
Yeah, I was a Quaestor. I think it was my third year that I was Quaestor, and just like a lot of chapters that we hear when at Balfour, I was handed that proverbial shoebox and really had to get things organized.
Okay, yeah. Not to brag, but I did run 9 times for scholarship chair, and guess how many times I got scholarship chair?
I'm gonna guess
0. That's right, 0. Yeah. So don't listen to me on scholarship chair. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I think so. This will be my second year on Quaestor faculty now, and I really think that transparency is something that as adults we talk a lot about. I mean, you look at cases like Enron and some of these major financial scandals with the big banks and all that stuff. And so I think everyone agrees that transparency is important, but as an undergrad, what does that really mean to you? And I think there's a really great example from when I was chapter advisor at University of Denver about 10 years ago that really kind of highlights, I think, the need for transparency. So if it's okay, I'll just kind of go over it real quickly, and then you and I can just kind of have a conversation in terms of maybe how would you do things differently, or what was really important to you when you were a Quaestor, and also maybe we can share other facilitation experiences we have, if that sounds good.
Sounds great.
Oh, I didn't have a plan B, so if you would have said no, this call would have been over. But so roughly about, 10, 12 years ago, the chapter at University of Denver, the Delta Iota chapter, they lost their chapter house. And so all the guys had to move on campus and in dorms. And, they were having their chapter meetings on campus and, in some, some classroom or something like that. And one night at chapter meeting, it was time for the G of O, and we're kind of going around the circle. One of the older guys was just fired up. I mean, and this was a calm, nice, respectful kid, and he was just unbelievably fired up. And he was like, I am so tired of this place. He's like, I am so frustrated because my dues keep going up and up and up and up. And I think it's absolute bullshit that I'm going to have to pay for a house that I'm never going to get a chance to see. I'm never going to get a chance to live in, sleep in, whatever. Why should my dues pay, for a house that I'm never going to see? And for it to come from him, everyone else then was like, yeah, this is BS. No, I mean, it was almost a mutiny, right? And Quaestor, young guy, didn't know what to do. Fortunately, I was going to business school, and so we actually just kind of had created this or finished this lesson system or lesson plan on transparency, and so I was able to pull the Quaestor aside and we kind of talked about it. And basically, what we came up with was we actually sent the members of the house a kind of a survey monkey or a Zoomerang, and we basically said, okay, brothers, for every dollar that's spent, or for every dollar worth of your dues, where does that go, do you think? Well, just what's your perception? Give us kind of your overall take on it. And so we took that, and then we kind of looked at the budget, and then we actually communicated what really happened. And it was pretty crazy because I'm hoping that you can see this okay, but the brothers' perception was that about maybe, 10% was going to social, 10% others, maybe like 5% a little bit, and then 25% were going to headquarters. Oh, I'm sorry. They were saying roughly 50% was then going to the new house. So this was the perception. So headquarters and the new house were basically taking 75% of their budget. And these guys were really, really upset by it. I don't blame them. But then what the Quaestor and I did was we actually then looked at the budget, and this is what we actually found. Okay, so yes, 25% was going to headquarters. Some going towards university, such as like to rent classrooms and stuff for meetings, some to do other stuff. 50%, a full-on 50% was going to social, and about 1 cent for every dollar's worth of dues was actually going to the new house. So if we go from this to this, that is a pretty massive difference. And the great thing about it was, once we showed it to the chapter, and I think what's actually pretty important is we actually showed it to them in these pie charts. And when we did that, we told the brothers, we're like, how does this look? And the brothers then became invested in it, and they actually became, what the hell? Why are we spending 50% of our dues? Why are they going towards social? Well, if you go back, it kind of makes sense, right? Because since they lost their chapter house, they still wanted to have a presence on campus, and they were still throwing parties. But they started like, for some reason, they started like making these really expensive postcards, and they would pass out almost like flyers almost, right? They would pass out these postcards and flyers on campus to get people to go to their parties. And then I was like, well, are you charging money for the parties? No. So it was just this giant bucket of, not a bucket even, more like a toilet. It's like, hey, listen, we do not need to spend much. So we also began kind of this bigger conversation about how the brotherhood was kind of affected. They're like, we can do stuff without alcohol or without involving money. But what if we start playing softball, or what if we start volunteering, or doing this, or doing this, or doing this? And so it really did get the whole chapter all put together. And so, on the same page, and actually made significant changes. But that's almost what it took. And I think that's a pretty good example of transparency. So, Wes, when you were Quaestor, did you do anything like this, or something better, something different, or not at all?
I wouldn't say anything better. Probably what I did was a little bit more archaic, and probably around the same time you did this was when I was Quaestor, to be honest. But there was a lot of questions from brothers. Where is the money going? And I know before I even took over Quaestor, I just knew it wasn't being handled well. I couldn't put my thumb on it. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew it wasn't handled well. We had a really good Quaestor. In fact, the brother's nickname was the Square because of how studious he was and everything. And then we had this fallout year where the guy just did the bare minimum and really was just taking advantage of the situation to get free rent and stuff like that. And so again, when I took over, I just knew something was wrong, and there was no foul play by that brother that kind of dropped the ball, just not organized. And so a lot of questions came of where's our money going and what's it for, and I had to answer those. And so I put out the budget. I showed everybody where money is going and just how much. So having that enlightenment really can change, as in your example, a chapter's outlook. And one thing, seeing those pie charts really takes me to Balfour with our Grand Quaestor, who's been very transparent to our Quaestors in our sessions, really showing how much of our money for dues goes to what for the general fraternity, and really just how important the foundation is to the success of a lot of our education programs and leadership within Sigma Chi.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's weird. Transparency sounds good, and then when you actually practice it, you're like, well, it's kind of different. It's actually maybe a little bit more work. And I think that one of the things that is just really, really helpful for transparency is actually to have a finance committee. And I know we created another video on the finance committee, but I had never heard of a finance committee really up until last year. And I was like, man, that is absolutely genius. And in fact, I'm a Grand Praetor now, and I've actually mandated all my chapters have a finance committee, and they have to include the Magister, the social chair, recruitment, and the house manager. because I mean, when you think about from where the money goes, that's really where most of the money goes, right? So if all those people are on board, then they kind of know what they have to spend and how much money is coming in, but then also they can help out with collecting the money as well. But the more people who are kind of in on it, and I think having that finance committee, I think it also kind of helps. It's some nice kind of oversight and accountability for the Quaestor as well. So everybody should really kind of have a big, nice, open picture of how much money is coming in, what's it being spent on, right? And I think the more people who are involved in part of that process, the more they can maybe have a say in, do we really need to spend this much money on flyers? Or would it be better instead if maybe we spent an extra $100 for light bulbs? That way we got the LEDs, that way we'd never have to change them again, something like that. So in your chapter, when you were a Quaestor, did you have a finance background or accounting background or something business related?
No, I was in the School of Education, so I was treasurer in various high school organizations that I was in, and so I had some experience, if you will, but nothing like what it is running a chapter from a financial perspective. So no, very, very, very little. A lot of self-taught, a lot of advice from my father that I picked up on over the years. But yeah, no formal education at all. And most of our Quaestors didn't. It was actually kind of funny. The Quaestor after me was in healthcare, and his twin brother was in finance, and he never became Quaestor, but he went on to become consul. So finance background is always a benefit, but it doesn't seem to be the norm, from what I can tell.
Interesting. Well, the reason I asked is when I was an undergrad at Montana, I was a history and political science major, so I know that it sounds stupid now, but the Quaestor would get up there and talk about accounts receivables and account payable, and I didn't even know what he meant. I was just kind of nodding along, man. I'm like, I paid my bill already. I don't even know what you guys are talking about. But I think that had they presented kind of financial information to the non-finance majors in a much more simplistic way, it's been a lot better for me. And I think that I would have taken a little bit more ownership, even been in a position to help out a little bit more. So I think that's kind of the other watch out. And that's why I think, again, these pie charts are pretty great. I mean, first of all, because pie, but then also it just breaks it down very visually, and I think that, it's weird, right? Because, I mean, you can look at a company's financial statements and yes, they're transparent with all the information there, but if you don't know what it says, is it really transparent? I would argue it's not, so transparency isn't just about making the information public, it's about making it public in such a way that everybody understands it,
That's a really excellent point, because not everybody has strength in finance, and even graphs, as visual as they are, I like to think of PIEs as more than just what we kind of use them as, and explaining the finance of the chapter, could be a PIT. It could be in the chapter meeting. I think there's various avenues and capabilities of how to present the information and give some training. And that's why I bring up PITs. It's all about training. It doesn't just have to be Sigma Chi training, in my opinion. But that's a really, really good point, that it's not just available, it's understandable.
Yeah. Well, again, man, I always like to think, I mean, imagine how great of a chapter we would have been in if we could take all our knowledge now and all have been in the same chapter. I mean, can you imagine how great that chapter would be? It'd be absolutely insane, but I guess that's why we're here, because, hopefully we want other people to learn from the stuff we did well, but also learn from our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And, that having been said, I'm pretty confident I still would not have been elected to scholarship chair with everything I know now. But what do you do? So, okay, well, I think, I think this is a very, very important conversation to have in our discussion groups. Pretty easy, doesn't have to be overly complicated, but Wes, any parting shots for you?
Well, just a quick question for you. A lot of transparency comes from, the chapter knowing who owes what, who's behind bills and stuff. And I'm just kind of curious as to what your opinion on that matter is. Is that something that should be public to the chapter to know that, hey, Johnny is past due 3 months or a semester or whatever? I mean, is that something that we should be sharing in our undergraduate chapters with the other undergrads, or is that more of a private thing and we're really talking about where the money is spent and where it goes?
That's a great question. I would have said about 5 years ago, even, I would have said, call these guys out every chance you get. I think now I've really kind of taken a shift almost where, I think first of all, I think, and this will be a separate video actually, but there's always the issue of what do we do with brothers who won't pay their bills, and in this other video, essentially what we talk about is, I think it's pretty important to really kind of distinguish between who are the guys who can't pay their bills, right? Meaning there's some kind of financial hardship, versus who are the ones who won't pay their bills, meaning they're just being world-class turds, right? I mean, like, they'll be at the bar every weekend, but they can't pay like $100 social fee or something like that, And so I think the way you handle those two situations actually should be very different. I think the other thing is that is also the benefit to having a finance committee, right, where, admittedly, I would argue that Quaestor is not a very well-respected position in its current form because most guys see them as the bill collector. But what happens if members of an entire complete finance committee, which includes the house manager, the social chair, recruitment, and McGeester, all come up to you and say, like, hey, dude, we really owe, we need you to pay some money. We've got this coming up for initiation. We've got this coming up, this party, this, and this. And we need you to start paying, dude. I think that makes it a lot different. So I think if a chapter can do a finance committee, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think also for them to maybe take different perspectives in terms of the can't pay versus won't pay. Again, if it's a can't pay, I think there's any number of things that a chapter could do very creatively. And I'll just kind of give an example, right? I mean, a year or two ago, I'm part of a really tight group of SIGs, all from different chapters, and we found out that one of the guys had lost his job, and he basically was, he couldn't do anything for his son's 15th or 16th birthday, which crushed him, and he was having problems with it, paying his mortgage. So, we kind of got on the horn with each other, and then in about an hour, we ponied up about $2,000. We basically paid for a birthday party for his son, and then we paid his mortgage that month. And then a month later, he got a job. He got back on his feet. And the thing is, I mean, from our perspective, though, he was such a great SIG and such a great brother. It was no problem at all. Because we knew he'd pay it back, either not necessarily in money, but just in time and his effort and his love for the fraternity and just his overall brotherhood and friendship. So I think you do have to make that distinction, but it's definitely evolved over the years, that's for sure. So I don't know, but it's a great question. How would you handle that?
I've heard so many different thoughts on it, and as much as I love the idea of calling the brother out and holding him accountable, I think it is delicate, and I think the can't pay and the won't pay, you got to really handle that different in terms of the conversations and how you're going about trying to collect that money from those brothers. I don't have an overwhelming desire to make it all public that this person owes this much and this person owes this much. But I do think that, you know, with the finance committee, you know, with others in the chapter, that they can help collect, even though it's not their job, you know, and it, you know, and it's all about how you handle it. It can be very, very powerful for that brother who can't pay, or even the brother who won't pay because he doesn't see the value in his money. You know, he knows it's just going to a bunch of social, or thinks it is, or going to a new house that he's never going to live in, you know. So it's all about how you handle it. And I think being upfront with the chapter about how much open AR there is, I think is a good step, without having to call out the brothers in a potentially negative way. So,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm definitely on that same page. And again, I mean, man, you'd have asked me 5 years, I'd be like, hell no. You know, like let's call these guys out. But you know, to your point, yeah, if maybe if one of the reasons the guy won't pay is because he thinks that it's all going towards something that he will never ever be the beneficiary of, you know. So, which again brings us back to the importance of transparency. You know, I think that you know, I think that all in all, it's a good thing, and it can lend to some really good discussions. You know, I mean, last year my BLTW group, we had this exact same talk, and I used this exact same examples, and you know, and then when we were talking about the can't pay versus won't pay, one of the guys was like, hey, you know what? Maybe what we could do is take a little bit of money from our social side and actually use it to pay for tutors for guys who are struggling. You know, because it was almost kind of like the guys who were struggling a little bit academically were also the guys who were great guys, but, you know, didn't, you know, some of them were behind on their bills. And, you know, and they said, you know, maybe if we can kind of show them that we care and this is a good place, maybe, you know, maybe they'll start getting involved more. Maybe they'll come around more, and, you know, maybe we'll just kind of build that brand on campus that, yeah, when you're a member here, you know, we care about you. You know, we'll do what we can to help you out. I thought it was a very brilliant and kind and elegant solution to transparency, at the same time kind of addressing some of the guys whose needs are maybe a little bit different, you know.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
but anyway, I think that's all I got. But unless you have anything else, I think we got another call in the can. And thanks, brothers. We appreciate it.
Thanks.